Why do most library jobs require a master's degree?
Almost all the people you deal with at a library are not librarians, but are library assistants, circulation assistants, and so on. The actual librarians, with master's degrees, work on the collection, deciding what books to buy, are helping with research, and generally running the place. It is not uncommon for a small public library to have just a single librarian, who also serves as the director, and maybe 5 or 10 library assistants.
I worked at a library many years ago and they definitely hired anyone competent for most jobs. However, the management-level jobs required a library sciences degree. I think this is pretty standard. I would be surprised if any library would require a degree for working the front desk, shelving books, etc. Someone with that master's degree here. I have friends still job searching. There are libraries that go you need the master's. And we'll give you $13 an hour and that's insulting. However, the best libraries require a mix of experience, and wouldn't require the full master's just for shelving and what other simple jobs you're thinking of. There's a lot in your question, so let's start a conversation. Ask away.
You ask 2 different questions with 2 different answers. Cataloging is a professional skill. I studied it at university for 3 years. I no longer work as a librarian, but when I did, I used those professional skills on a daily basis. Shelving books is a skill that can definitely be learned on the job. It's generally done by library assistants, not librarians, who have school-level qualifications. The fact that the library is open restricted hours is due to a shortage of library assistants, not a shortage of librarians. In other words, you're right. These jobs can absolutely be done by staff who have never been to university or library school. Edit. Yes, I did leave librarianship for a better paying job. Many misconceptions in this thread. Unless degree is not about learning how to shelf books. You do learn how to do cataloging, which is more complicated than you are imagining, especially in an academic library, but that is usually only a couple of courses. The bulk of the degree is spent on the information sciences portion of it. Learning how to create and manage databases, how to create and manage public-facing catalogs, creating good user experiences, the theory and implementation of data science, etc. The degree is not about those basic on-the-job skills, which you learn no training when you actually start a library job. It is about the very ideas of how we create, manage, and store information, whether that be in paper format, electronic, or online. I work in a library setting now and I use these skills every day. I'm in charge of managing our internal and external cataloging systems, and it requires quite a lot of technological expertise and definitely an understanding of the theories of information science.
Many people still think of libraries in a traditional sense, as places that store books. But any librarian can tell you that they are much more than that. Even if all paper books were to suddenly disappear tomorrow, librarians would still be needed. In fact, as the internet has grown, librarians have been needed more than ever. There is an overabundance of information available to us in this world. And librarians are the ones who catalog that information and make it accessible to others. They are the keepers and the finders. Good luck conducting any kind of research without the work of those people behind the scenes who have made sure that the information you are looking for is available and accessible. Now, your average public library is definitely the more front-facing type of library service. They typically employ a handful of actual librarians who may do the cataloging or more advanced work of running the library. But they are mostly staffed by library assistants who work the front desk or shelf books. It really depends on how large the library system is, and the type of public that they are serving. It can range anywhere from one librarian who does all the work, to a team of dozens of librarians and hundreds of assistants who specialize in different areas. Most of the jobs in a public library probably do not require a degree. As in any field, it's useful to remember that the people that you are seeing on the front lines are just scratching the surface of the operation. There are other people and theories and decisions and policies behind all of that work. One of the goals of librarians is to make information access so easy that people don't even realize that they're doing it or the work that was involved to make it possible. Fortunately, librarians often succeed in this task. But unfortunately, this leads to people undervaluing their role. I thought a librarian actually runs the entire library. So, the person doing checkouts and shelving don't necessarily need a master's degree. The person that deals with ordering books, interlibrary loans, setting up whatever local programs, should have a master's degree. It's not a purely technical job that can be taught in vocational schools. When the reading programs and what the librarian pushes out could potentially have a big effect on the kids. My wife has a master's in library science. The answer to your question is that libraries are much more complicated than you think, especially if they are run well. Example: the collection should be an ever-changing thing that requires analysis. Old, out-of-date or superseded texts should be removed, and new ones take their place. Knowing how to do that is not easy. And then there is the process of actually ordering the new materials. Another example: as the director of a town library, my wife is 100% responsible for the budget, payroll, reconciliation, paying the bills, etc. Another example: dealing with collection challenges, aka outrage from people who demand certain books be pulled off the shelf. So, censorship. This involves legal pieces, and really comes down to being important to a free, democratic society. It's kind of a big deal. Now, of course, other staff, clerks, pages, etc. don't need to have degrees. And many times libraries may put that as a requirement for a children's librarian, assistant director, etc. But they don't actually get it. One last note about staffing. Most libraries will have a mandatory 2 staff minimum to be open. I'm talking small libraries, not city libraries. This is for safety reasons. However, those small libraries are also funded in such a way to barely cover the number of hours available. So, if someone gets COVID or otherwise misses shifts, it may not be possible to over for them. But again, the bottom line is that, as is the case with most things, there is much more to running a library than most people realize. The bigger question is, why do they pay shit? As my grandfather said, you can't work with books without reading a few books. To be a librarian, you now have to be tech savvy as well as be able to catalog and everything. Also, most of the people there are assistants and not actual librarians. Librarians are not just there to shelve books. They are community organizers of information. It's not about putting information on the shelf. It's about finding the information needed, picking relevant info, and figuring out how to communicate that information in an obvious manner. Those are skills that are primarily learned in college. I think it depends on the job. To be a librarian, you need a library qualification, which is usually a postgraduate degree. But to be a library assistant, you generally just need customer service experience. At least where I live, that's the case. To learn how to catalog and shelve books. There is a distinction between library workers and librarians. Library workers do that kind of work, specifically copy cataloging, and you don't need a library science degree for that. But librarians do a lot more. It's actually a very complex job with a lot of academic rigor. Local library in my town put an ad up for $18 an hour for librarian assistants and required a BA. The local target is hiring for $18 plus free tuition lol. A good friend of mine married a woman who just finished her librarian master's. The degree itself was all about cataloging, record keeping, reconciliation, and general organization. Very meticulous data keeping that required some IT work, a bit of math, lots of English, and more than anything experience handling increasingly large amounts of information. I think it's a throwback to the days when information sources were a rare commodity and a library was almost a strategic resource. Plus a library had a significant dollar value in regards to media, property and the building itself. They wouldn't trust that to just anybody. First of all, most library jobs do not require a master's degree. Shelvers may not need a degree at all. If it is a large library, they probably have a loading dock and those workers do not need a degree. The IT people may need a degree and certification, but probably not a master's. There are often people who work in data entry type roles that do not necessarily need a degree but may ask for one. The people at the front desk may mostly be staff people who do not need a master's degree. About the only people who need master's degrees are the librarians. Unless this is a school library, which often requires an education degree, or a very small rural library with few people on staff. Librarians are a small number of the people who work in a library. Librarians aren't typically the people you see shelving books. Cataloging is often done as a mix of regular staff and a handful of librarians. Why? That's the second part of your question. Why do they need a master's? Librarians are professionals who deal with how information is organized. This means they have to know where various types of data are collected and how to organize new data. This means they have to be trained for consistency. If you go into a new library and found everything relating to Sweden was classified as fiction and organized by the color on the spine, you'd probably be rightfully upset. You expect information storage to follow consistent guidelines even if you don't know the guidelines themselves. But let's go one step harder. What if you wanted to look up a map about Sweden? How do you find maps? How are they organized? What type of map? What level of detail? Which part of Sweden? What if you were researching data trends? Do you know how to extract that information? This, as well as a bunch of other reasons, are why they are master-level professionals. They are the library administrators. They are researchers. And they maintain the data integrity. They have to decide what information needs to be readily available and what can be removed. So the staff shortages you are reporting are probably due to people who do not have nor need a master's degree to do their job. The people who do have them, however, are a small minority of the staff and cannot perform those other positions' jobs as well as their own. For reference, a master's in library and information science is the easiest and one of the cheapest master's degrees you can get. Most library jobs do not require master's degree. In fact, you don't even need a GED to shelve books. However, all librarian jobs do require an MLIS. Libraries are the last free indoor space left in our communities. As such, librarians, good ones, serve more as community organizers than just shelving books. In fact, nowadays in library school they teach you community outreach and organizing public events as well as how to catalog and purchase books based on who is in the community. That's a good question. My grandmother was a librarian at a private school for years and had no degree at all. 1935 to 1970 more or less. 'Cause libraries are the shit and it's super competitive.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Haircast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.